What type of commitment and dedication and drive did it take to get you to that high level?
It's just like any profession. If you want to be really good at something, you have to continue to sharpen yourself, sharpen your tools. And that doesn't stop. Even when we got Jersey Boys, we continued to make sure that the show is as sharp as it can be. And that's the same kind of commitment that it takes outside the show.
Today, we're joined by Jeff Leibow, former star of the hit Las Vegas strip show Jersey Boys and current director of development for the NF Hope concert. Jeff will be sharing his experiences in one of Las Vegas's most popular shows and also the challenges that he faced learning that his daughter Emma had a rare condition called neurofibromatosis. If you like this episode, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. Jeff Leibow, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get into some very important stuff, but first I want to get into your background just a little bit. I think it's important for people watching the show to understand a little bit about your history. So you came to Vegas how long ago?
I re-arrived in 2008.
Okay, and where did you come from?
Came from the Bay Area of California.
All right, very good. And you have an interesting background, which will sort of lead us into topics, into the later part of the show here. But musician, singer, songwriter, all of those things, producer. Tell me a little bit about your background there.
So it gets weirder than that. I mean, I've got a degree in zoology from UC Davis, like all good entertainers should have. But I was in college and a friend of mine dared me to audition for a show, and that kind of got me into theater. And eventually it turned into a career. I ended up in New York and went to school. I was in the midst of sort of doing multiple things, working in the science side while doing theater in the Bay Area. And then we landed here in Vegas. And I was, I guess I don't want to lead your next question, but I mean, I was doing professional theater. I'd become a union member, and my big gig landed us here in 2008.
So let's talk about that big gig.
Okay.
Jersey Boys.
Yeah.
One of the longest running shows on the strip, highly successful. You played one of the starring roles in that. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
It was otherworldly. I mean, as much as I've gotten to do amazing shows as a performer. That the being in that world of Jersey Boys, where you're sitting at the bar with Frankie Valli and he's telling you about the guy that you're playing. It's a different world. But it was an amazing experience. I mean, they built a theater for us in Vegas. We came out here, we opened it up. Did the show for 7 years and 2,700 performances, and it never got old.
Wow, 2,700 performances.
Yeah.
So to have that type of success and achieve that level where that's one of the, I guess, was one of the most famous shows. I would see it driving down the freeway. Everywhere you go, they're talking about Jersey Boys. What type of commitment and dedication and drive did it take to get you from the zoology degree right, and sort of dipping your toe into the waters of performance and so forth to that high level?
I mean, honestly, that's one thing about performing. If you're really going to dedicate yourself to performing, regardless of whether you land at Jersey Boys or not, it takes training. It takes you don't ever stop. You don't train and then go. It's just like any profession. If you want to be really good at something, you have to continue to sharpen yourself, sharpen your tools, take dance classes, keep your voice in shape, keep your body, healthy enough that you can do what a show takes of you or asks of you. And that doesn't stop. Even when we got Jersey Boys, we continued to rehearse. We continued to keep ourselves in the best shape we could, working on dialect. I mean, we had people coming out all the time, including the Broadway creative team, to sort of work with us and make sure that the show is as sharp as it can be. And that's the same kind of commitment that it takes outside the show. You don't ever stop and be complacent. You have to always sort of look to be better.
Yeah. How many people auditioned for your specific role? Do you even know?
I do. I think at some point I was talking to the casting director, and I think she said something along the lines of hundreds. But I don't know. I don't have an exact number.
So out of hundreds, you managed to stand out in that crowd and become the guy.
Yeah.
And achieve that success. I think that's probably a good place for us to segue into the next part of your life.
Yeah.
And something I want to focus on a lot here today is the neurofibromatosis NF Hope concert that you put on each and every year now in multiple cities.
Yeah.
But let's kind of first talk about the why of that. So you have a daughter, Emma. Maybe you can share a little bit with us about that.
Sure. As while I was still in the show, Emma was 3 months old, and her pediatrician said, we found a symptom. It might be something about this neurofibromatosis. We had no idea what the word meant. A bunch of tests later, and at 9 months old, she was officially diagnosed with neurofibromatosis. And if you don't know what that is, it's a neurological disorder that's characterized by tumors that can grow on any nerve in the body at any time. There's a whole slew of symptoms, everything from sort of the benign symptoms like birthmark type spots, which is how we diagnosed it, to attention learning disorders, some more sort of moderate symptoms like blindness, deafness, chronic pain, and then the severe we don't even like to talk about. But that really runs the gamut. And it's also a rare disease. Only 1 in 2,500 people are born with this, and as large a number as that seems, it still qualifies as a rare disease.
Yeah, in the early stages, you had a hard time just even diagnosing and determining what it was that was going on.
Yeah, and part of that, is finding the right physicians, people that really understand the disorder and recognize it and can help. There's 5 diagnostic symptoms. There's not scans that are done or blood tests that are done. If you have 2 or more of these diagnostic symptoms, then you can be diagnosed. But finding somebody who recognizes that is a challenge. And it took a number of doctors, some in New York, some here, some in Los Angeles, to sort of officially diagnose her. But once we knew, it started us down this new path.
Recognizing that, coming to that conclusion, how did that change things for you at that point?
There's the morning. There's the sort of figuring out, what does this mean. There's also, the very common question is why. Why did this happen? That same drive that probably got me the role in Jersey Boys,
Yeah.
made me then ask, what can I do? And I made a phone call to a national organization called Neurofibromatosis Network, and spent 2 hours on the phone with the executive director, who was a mom of a child with NF. And she asked me the same thing I'd already been thinking about: is what do you want to do about it? Is there anything you can think of? And I thought, sure. And so this idea came into my mind, and my wife and I started ruminating on it. And a very Gershwin-esque idea of throwing on a show in a barn and calling our friends and seeing if we could just get some people in the audience and raise a little bit of money. And so in 2011, we found a barn. It was a very big barn. It was the Las Vegas Hilton. And we put on a show. And it kind of opened our eyes to what we could do. I think the biggest thing I would say when it comes to this is, you're stuck. You want to do something. You could either do something, you could do nothing. And a lot of people are scared, and I understand where that goes, and they kind of want to hide, and they don't do anything. And that's not who I am. I needed to do something.
And that's a big leap, and you're absolutely right. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because typically, as a parent, I'm a parent. I fortunately have not had to go through what you have, but I can only imagine what that would feel like. Now, there's a decision that you made to just, focusing on Emma, taking care of her, treating her, making sure that she had everything that she needed.
Mhm.
But that next step to, I'm not only going to help her, but I'm going to help hundreds of other kids. So let's talk about that moment where you and Melody, who also performs in the show, but when you guys just decided, hey, we're gonna go for it here.
I think the inspiration was really Emma. As much as I would like to say I'd immediately had this altruistic feeling where I wanted to help tens of thousands of kids and people out there. Initially, it was we had to do something for her. There was no treatment. There's no cure. All we could do is take her to the doctor and get scans and kind of wait for something to happen. And so initially, she was the inspiration. I think after that first concert, we immediately realized that, of course, we're doing this for her, but this isn't just for her. And that first concert, I met 3 or 4 NF families, 2 of whom are still longtime friends. And you realize that who you're doing it for is much bigger than just one person. And so that's the inspiration we get from Emma is enough. The inspiration we get from the tens of thousands of families out there, including thousands that we've met, I'm sure, along the way, is even bigger.
Yeah, and so that first show in 2011 is now maybe walk us through a little bit of that evolution. But you started with, I'm sure it was a much smaller production.
Yeah.
You've now graduated. My first show that I attended was at the Wynn, I believe. No, I'm sorry. It was at
Plaza.
the
Yeah.
Plaza. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in one of the showrooms there, and since then, even I've watched the evolution of the show and how it's grown, and now you're doing it in multiple cities, right? So maybe talk me through that decision to do it, and how do you rally the troops around you? It's calling, is it calling all the guys at Jersey Boys, all the musicians that walk me through a little bit of that, and also kind of where your head was at that point too. You're dealing with your daughter who has this condition now, and the reality of that and how that might change her life, but also then putting in, which has become almost a full time, right? If not a completely full time, just give me a little bit of where your head was at that point.
Again, we there was still so much we didn't know. Unfortunately, we didn't have any scary symptoms that had popped up. But that first time, we just wanted to do something, because it's amazing with a rare disease how much as a parent you feel like you're in an island. We had never heard of the word. Nobody around us had ever heard of the word before. So we but we wanted to do something. But our head with Emma was more about, we got to let other people know about this. I can't turn over my shoulder, talk to somebody, and have them not have any clue what we're talking about. I wanted to teach people about NF. So that was part of it. And then honestly, after the first one, we didn't necessarily think this was going to be an annual event. It was at that first concert we were done and we were cleaning up, and somebody came up to us and asked us, when is the next one going to be? And that was the first time we thought, well, what if there was a next one? And so I wish I could say that I had this master plan that I was living by and working by and sort of working to grow this thing, but it kind of all happened very organically. And it wasn't until we hit about the third year when I met a friend named Paul Bodner who had had ideas about how we could grow this into something bigger, that I started sort of seeing a future to this and how it was going to work and how I want to expand it and what it was going to do. And that, that third and fourth and fifth year, we were increasing our fundraising by multiples, and the audience was getting bigger. And you ask about how it came together. Well, the first time it was very much, yeah, hey guys in the show,
Yeah.
come and get on stage with me. And hey guys who are in shows where Jersey Boys has walked your red carpet for your opening night, come and do a show with me. And the more we did it, the more the reputation for the NF Hope concert sort of grew in this town. And then we were getting approached. And then I would reach out to a bigger name here in town, and they would know us. And then I'd reach out to a bigger name outside of this town, and they would know us. And so the ask becomes easier as it grows. And, again, it's continued in that organic way.
Mhm.
But, when we started planning for multiple cities, that's when it really sort of had a plan.
Yeah. And what did you do, or did you draw from that time building up into your experience with the Jersey Boys, all of the practice, the rehearsal, all the things we talked about earlier? Were you able to draw anything from those experiences and apply it to the concert itself?
In a way, one of the things that I think has made me successful as a performer is that if I run into something I don't know how to do, I don't like to accept that. So I like to learn how to do it. If there's some kind of dance that I need to do, or some, a vocal thing that I wasn't able to do, I couldn't just say, okay, well, I can't do that. I'd like to conquer that mountain, essentially. And so there's a lot that I needed to learn. And if there's one thing that I drew from, was that passion for learning something new and figuring it out. So, the reason I've gotten so much better at this is because I've run into a whole lot of things that I didn't know how to do.
Yeah.
And I refuse to accept that. And so now, right now, we can get a whole conversation about what I'm learning about AI, but
Yeah.
that never stops. And that's what's helped this grow.
So that's a real hunger that you've always had.
Always
To
have.
always be learning and growing as an individual and as a human, right?
Yeah.
So how does, so 2011, Emma was very young.
Mhm.
Fast forward, she's a teenager now, right? So how you know how has and what role does she play in keeping you grounded and moving forward in this whole path that you're on now?
When she was younger, I think she played a more active role in a way, in that she was aware of what we were doing, and she thought it was fun. And so we wanted to sort of keep that fun feeling around something that was very much not fun, and it helped guide us into how we wanted to present the concert, I think. and involve her. Now it's different. She is a teenager. Yes. She has she's interested at times and not interested at times in the way a teenager can not be interested. But now for us, it's more the existential. How do we help her? How do we help her and the tens of thousands of people living with NF like her that continues to inspire us?
But this is a lot of work, right? So what fuels you? Again, I know understand it's very personal, and that is something. But man, you and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and it's a huge undertaking. What continues to fuel and motivate you?
There's a little bit of competition with myself. You start to see success in anything you do, and you think, well, wouldn't that be cool if I could be even more successful next time? And that's every year I start, and that's probably the first thing that pops into my head is how can we do more? And I think it's helped us continue every year to exceed each subsequent year with raising more.
Yeah.
And now again, the inspiration for why you do that changes this year. We've got a brand new inspiration. This brand new inspiration is that there's federal funding for research, for NF research, that has really changed the NF landscape for patients, for researchers, providing more clinical trials for potential treatments. And now we actually have 2 FDA approved treatments that were very much influenced and helped by this federal funding. And this is a tough year for federal funding. So
Yeah.
we've lost that research money for NF going into the next year. So now there's this new inspiration. What else can we do? How can we grow this? Well, now we've got a reason to grow it. We want to help supplement that loss of income. Now, as much as I would love to find somebody who'll write a $25 million check for me, I don't know if we will, but it's that inspiration to sort of take the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. So another challenge,
Right.
right? Another hurdle that then becomes, and I guess motivation, right? And
Yeah.
to try to fill that void that has been left. Obviously, a lot of changes politically that are driving that, and I guess this is a perfect example of it hitting somebody that I know, right?
Right.
You and I talked about this, how a decision made, a political decision made, and sort of getting caught up in this whole movement forward, and now it lands in your specific charity,
Yeah.
right? In your issue. What is new in terms of, I don't know how specific we want to get, but ultimately, maybe you can tell us a little bit about anything that is new for neurofibromatosis and treatments or research that's happening that really has you excited.
Well, there's the focus on FDA approval for treatments have been for a specific type of tumor. And I mentioned earlier that NF is named after tumors that grow on nerves. And one of them is called a plexiform neurofibroma, and it's particularly nasty. The one thing these tumors do is they grow. So if you've ever heard of somebody with a 100-pound tumor, most probably that was an NF tumor, and that was a plexiform neurofibroma. They just grow. But they also carry with them a 9 to 13% chance of becoming an incurable NF-specific cancer. And we've now gotten to the point where we have 2 potential treatments for the tumor. There's an upcoming clinical trial that's actually been going on, and not just one, where they're combining therapies to try to treat what was once an incurable cancer. And we might actually be seeing clinical trials break into potential treatments, so that if that happens, you don't have to tell a family that there's no fight to be fought. You can say, we have a tool for you now. That excites me. It's not just because Emma has one of those tumors and we know what that threat means.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, especially in your position, and earlier you talked about the goals for the concert, and I guess unlike most things, yours is very measurable. It's we had a show, and how much did we raise out of that? I mean, there's no denying that number. But then ultimately to see how that work and that effort is actually now resulting and culminating in potential treatments, that has to be a great feeling for you.
It is, and right now, what I'm also helping fund this year, this where that new inspiration is a project called Project Dream, which is something that I'm chairing the committee for at NF Network, and that is actually funding seed grants for researchers. To invite new researchers into the field to help pay, for grants for maybe new ideas from well-seasoned researchers. And yeah, being a part of something like that, being a part of what changes things is, that's why I got into this for. I wanted to do something. I can't be more ultimate expression of doing something
Mhm.
than research.
How much of that doing something would you say is your way of really kind of dealing with this issue?
99%.
I mean, is this your best form of therapy really at the end of the day?
Yeah, I've sat down with my wife Melody a number of times, and we know how much work this is, and often it's very exhausting. It's not uncommon for me in my suit after a concert to crash onto the bed and wake up the next morning still in my suit. Um, and we ask ourselves, is it worth it? And the answer is always the same. There's very little that we can do for her.
Mhm.
This is what we do. I can't imagine not doing it. That's a very common discussion,
Mhm.
and it makes the exhaustion, the time spent, all worth it.
Yeah. Now, um, obviously, who, I guess what I want to ask you is, who holds you up, right? Who props you up? You're there for your daughter, for the NF community. You're raising all of this money for such a wonderful cause, but who keeps you going forward? Who holds you up?
It starts at home. I'm fortunate to have a wife that not only helps dig in and help, but recognizes the value of it, even if it is time consuming and exhausting. Um, if you'd asked me this maybe even a handful of years ago, I might have told you that I still felt like I'm on an island. Um, but I've been reminded in recent years that being a part of this community isn't just about helping them. It's very much reciprocal, and and it comes at times when I wish we didn't have our own challenges with NF. I wish I could just be helping them. But right now we're facing a brand new challenge, and we've already had members of the community step up to us and say, "We've experienced this. We know what it's like. Tell us if you need anything."
Hmm.
That's how I'm getting, moving forward, especially right now.
So, what would you tell somebody in your position? And we talked about this earlier. There's a difference between making a donation and cutting a check and actually being a leader in a cause. What would you tell somebody who had a similar experience, and what would your advice be to them as they sort of wrestle with the issue that faces them, whether it's a child, a family member, and then actually taking that leap into a lot of, I guess, activating yourself into a mission.
I think it first you have to decide if you're in a place where you can make that choice to do something. Once you do, you just have to you don't have you have to almost just dive in. It's like a nice plunge. You have no choice. You just have to do it. And it's okay if it's messy at first. But find the people that you can lean on. Find the people that will help you along the way. And know that even if it's something small, that you've accomplished something, and build on that. Don't be discouraged because it's only that. Be encouraged be that you did that. And the more that you can continue to build, eventually it's not just going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more, and it's going to be a lot. And before you know it, you will have created something that is helping whatever community that means something to you.
And I think that takes a certain amount of patience.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I know myself. Uh, you know, I want to solve it today, right?
Yeah.
I want to find out what can we do. Let's put this thing to bed and let's find some solutions now. But that's not always the reality of the situation. So for you, I imagine there's been this thought process of, hey, we're going to take this one step at a time. We're going to continue to grow this. But yet on the other side of that, you've got your own daughter who you want to help tomorrow. How do you get through that part of it?
I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that I had to temper my patience on occasion, because there's that immediacy, I want to snap my fingers and make it go away, if you're asking me that question.
Yep,
But
exactly.
but you become very aware of what you can what is reality and what isn't. And you build on changing the current reality something closer than that. It's it is Yeah, it's a challenge. It's not always easy to not want to make that quick decision.
Yeah.
But I think we're now heading to our 15th annual NF Hope concert in Las Vegas this year, and I think it's a lesson in what happens when you're persistent.
That's a great segue. Well, let's talk about the concert itself.
Sure.
So, I've attended many here in Las Vegas. You've expanded it out into 2 other cities?
New York and Chicago, yeah.
Okay. So, what's on tap for us this year?
Well, this year's the 15th. So
Yeah.
it's for, I always try to make sure that the concert begins as a form of entertainment. The education is easy. I could talk to somebody about NF for hours and not repeat something. Uh, I know that I'll be able to educate the people that are there. So it always begins with the entertainment. And this year being 15 years of doing this in Las Vegas, it is amazing the roster of talent that we have gone through over the years. And so it's time to sort of sift through and put together something, an entertaining retrospective and all the people who have donated their talents to get us to where we are. And that's going to be a big part of what this year in Las Vegas is. And it's even bleeding into Chicago, which hasn't been around as long. And then the rest of it, it's okay. Well, there are some new lessons to be taught to the audience this year. How are we going to teach those lessons? That I know I'll figure out. I'm already working on that.
Have you set a date?
Yes, of course. The 15th annual NF Hope concert is going to be Sunday, October 19th. Tickets go on sale July 21st at the Smith Center box office. So it's going to be at Myron's at the Smith Center. We haven't set the time quite yet. Okay. Partly because I have to take a look at the football schedule.
That's what the NFL, the Raiders game.
Yeah, exactly. If there's a home game, we've got to schedule as best we can around that. But the tickets will go on sale. We're going to have a little sort of we have our holiday concert in Chicago is a Christmas concert. So we do a Christmas in July ticket sale thing that will bleed back into Vegas, and we'll really get people on the last 10 days of July to come out, get their tickets early. And we always we always challenge anybody that's been to the concert to come back with 10 new friends.
Yeah.
And so, we'll remind everybody of that when tickets go on sale.
Well, I will certainly be there. And it's a fantastic show and obviously a wonderful cause. As we wrap this up, do you ever think about the legacy that you're building? And really not just through NF Hope, but your family and Emma and all of that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. It's hard not to. I think after 2 years, I think we realized that we were making a difference. After 15, we've seen what that difference is. And it's hard not to think about the fact that this is a legacy. I think the legacy that this concert is leaving behind, at least for me, obviously is centered around my family. But it's part of who I am. And I think I didn't always know that. I learned that as I did this. I've always been some of an empath, but I just like knowing that I'm helping people. And after I'm done with these concerts, and maybe somebody will take it over, maybe they won't. But I'd like to know that people will look back on this and say that made a difference.
Yeah, well, I'm sure your family, Emma, Melody, are all very proud of you. I know I am. I'm proud to be a part of it, and certainly appreciate what you're doing for the community. So, Jeff, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.